Welcome back to another LP Magazine podcast. This is another version of Inside Scoop, and today we're really going to go inside on the Inside Scoop, and we're going to get to all the nitty gritty with my guest, Cory Lowe from the Loss Prevention Research Council. Cory and I, first of all, we go way back. We've known each other for a while now, but we were really recently attended a really good meeting for loss prevention professionals, and we both had some of the same thoughts as we walked away from that meeting. So we're gonna dive into that a little bit in depth today. We're gonna talk about real-time crime centers. We're gonna talk about deterrence and thresholds. So lots of good stuff. But before we get going, Cory, just can you introduce yourself to the audience for those that don't know you?
Yes, thank you, Stefanie. Yes, my name is Cory Lowe. I'm the Director of Research at the LPRC. Lead the research team there, which has consistently grown over the last couple of years. Doing a lot of awesome stuff over there. So we really enjoy our partnership with the Loss Prevention Magazine, and always love working with Stefanie. So
yeah, it's a great partnership. So for those that don't know, Cory's down there in Florida with all that heat. So Cory, what's your weather today? We have snow on the ground here.
actually, I think the high was in the 60s today, so it's not as nice as it could be. It was 48 this morning when I took the kids to the school, so it's
Wow, that's
57
chilly.
right now.
Chilly for you.
Yeah, it's a bit chilly, but bit chilly.
So Cory, I know you and I were just doing like a little pre-conversation about what we wanted to talk about. And as we were both sitting in this meeting a couple weeks ago, listening to some people talk, there was one person in particular, was sort of a politician, so to speak, who was giving a talk.
Yep.
And during his talk, he mentioned a lot of things that were sort of misinformed, in my opinion, and sort of like these talking points. We continuously hear about how the rising crime rate is all due to the fact that states have a felony threshold that's too high for retail theft.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of thoughts on that. I mean, they're boiling down a very complicated problem into something that's so simplistic. It's super frustrating. And I know I looked over at you at the table, and I think you were thinking the same thing. But
Yeah.
what were your thoughts on that?
So when you're a politician, you're looking for things that can give you a role in the solution. I think, and legislation is one of those things. So if you can adjust the penal code and what is considered a felony, that's something a legislator can actually do, or a politician can do, or influence. But sometimes I think that is a misguided conversation. Because if you look at the felony threshold, and I think this is where we were both kind of like, because you've seen the map of the felony thresholds.
Mhm.
And California, yes, theirs is low, but it's low. It's actually, you know, Texas is, or sorry, California's is high, but it's actually lower than like California and South Carolina and several other states where they don't have the same kind of loss problems that California has.
Right.
And that's the reason that's important, is because if you are attributing the problems in California, and there are a lot of them, the undeniable problems that the data at the LPRC shows that California is a state unto itself when it comes to loss problems. But if you're attributing that problem to the thresholds, and you look at the map, it doesn't make sense. So it has to be something beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what kind of irked me, because I hear a lot of that discussion. I hear anecdotes of people, of offenders, standing in the store using a calculator to add up the amount of merchandise that they're stealing. Just from a criminological perspective, that's implausible for a few reasons. And I know that people, and I've talked to professionals who say they've seen it. Or heard about it, or heard it from offenders who have been arrested and interviewed. And I don't doubt those stories, but also don't believe that that's happening at a widespread scale. And there's a few reasons for that. If you're a sophisticated offender, you know that before you get to the store,
Right.
right?
Yep.
You know
You're
what
not
you're
taking
going
out,
in for.
yeah, you're not
You're,
taking your
you're, you're not
calculator.
figuring, yeah. If they were doing that, they would be arrested because they're slowing down their trip into the store and getting out. So if you're sophisticated offenders, you are quite rational. You're doing things in a sophisticated manner, in a thoughtful manner, and you've got things planned before you go.
Right.
So that's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is the unsophisticated offenders. Oftentimes, those offenders are the very impulsive ones who are going to be less sensitive to cues that a rational person or a more rational and thoughtful person might be sensitive to. So in that moment, in that spontaneous theft event, or even if it's something that they decided that on this date they're going to go into the store, they're also not going to be counting things. So you just kind of got rid of two of the most problematic, populations of offenders in this discussion. So that's the threshold issue, and why I have concerns about the entire discussion around that is I think that it might kind of upset some of the discussions that should be going on in the industry and by policymakers.
And I don't get me wrong, Cory, I think that the felony thresholds are too high. I live here in Illinois, Chicago. Our felony threshold has crept up over the years since I've been in the industry. But there are locations, mentioned South Carolina. I think their felony threshold is 1,500. Texas is like 1,500. Wisconsin, much higher than California and Illinois, but we never hear about those locations. We always point to the folks in California and Illinois as the, sort of like the problem children because of their felony threshold. But just in my mind, I'm like, okay, let's think about population densities. And if our felony thresholds continue to go lower, we have so many people here, like all of the jails are just going to be completely clogged with all these folks, hitting that felony threshold. So I think there really is a balance in here that we need to be cognizant of.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thoughtful analysis of this problem is thinking you do have to think about those broader issues of how do you pay for a criminal justice system where you have so much offending going on that you can't your answer can no longer be to lock up everyone. And that's probably because of social issues in those places and a lot of challenges that they have. And those social challenges probably need to be addressed to address the broader offending problem. But unfortunately, retailers and LP programs specifically don't have a lot of control over addressing some of those social problems. So when they look at the problem, they think, okay, the thing that we do have control over is investigations and deterrence and our loss prevention, merchandise protection programs, all of that. But it's the threshold discussion is definitely problematic. A more nuanced view of this would be to actually do the analysis and say, okay, the threshold should be this because at this point is where we have the greatest deterrent effect, or this is the point at which crime actually goes down because of the level of the threshold, and that's probably going to differ by state. The problem with doing that analysis, and we don't have that many studies that look at the threshold issues, and the studies that we do have use official statistics. So when they've done studies of, say, Prop 47 in California, they use the official statistics, which don't include a lot of retail offenses. And this goes back to the broader data issue that we've discussed before. If I want to understand what the effect of increasing the felony theft threshold is on crime, then I need to use the actual incident data across jurisdictions. We know from the ORC across the states report that we did that there's considerable variation across states in terms of the percentage of incidents that are actually being reported to law enforcement. If those differ across the states and you're comparing what happens to incidents in a state with other states that have different reporting rates, you're going to have a lot of problems actually coming to valid conclusions there. So it goes back to having that data across the industry and being able to do some policy analysis that we actually need to do, while also taking into consideration all the other issues with raising or lowering the felony theft threshold. Can you sustain a criminal justice system and a prison population where everyone's getting locked up for because you have a very low felony theft threshold? Also, what happens to the court system? right? You're also going to clog up the court system. You're going to have more people having to plea out. That's going to reduce the consequences anyways. Like, this is a system. When you mess with one piece of the system, it's going to affect all other pieces of the system. That's where we have to be a little more sophisticated in our thinking than focusing just on felony theft thresholds.
Yeah, I think to your point,
So,
and you and I have talked about this before, is that we have to take the emotion out of our solutions. And really, we can't do that until we get hard data and data that's
yeah,
reliable. Can you talk a
yeah.
little bit about any movement that you're seeing in that area? I know there's a lot of different attempts going on out there to get data from retailers. What are you seeing at the LPRC?
So, there's several, like you said, several different projects. We have the ORC Across the States initiative. We have the American Retail Crime Shrink and Security Initiative, where we're getting shrink and incident data from retailers directly. The NRF just published their study, which showed a 93% increase that Christina from my team worked with them to conduct that research since 2019. Since COVID, there's been a 93% increase in the incidents. And we can go into some of that data and where that actually comes from. There's several things out there. I think I'm most hopeful about some of the initiatives that are getting incident data straight from retailers, like the American Retail Crime Shrink and Security Initiative. And there's some other organizations that are working on some initiatives that I don't know that have been publicly released yet, so I won't go into those, but those are all very, very important initiatives. And the reason for that is that then you have the data that policymakers actually need to make informed policy. Without that, you're looking at numbers that are all kinds of mixed up. Those crime statistics are still important for, say, in-state comparisons, year-over-year comparisons. If you are assuming that reporting within a state or within a jurisdiction has remained roughly the same, you can make some of those year-over-year comparisons. You can't do that if you have reasons to believe that that is changing, and there's lots of reasons to think that official statistics might be affected by a lot of social factors. And I can go into those, but there's just so many problems with the official statistics that I'm deeply concerned about. So I think we're going in good directions with industry data. I also think there's a lot of good work being done with the ORC associations across the United States with incident data being shared.
Right.
I think the big problem is how actionable is a lot of that data. I think the ORC associations are doing a very good job in sharing information between law enforcement and retailers. I think the limitation currently is when that data gets to people. So if they're on a common platform, a lot of that's going to be instantaneous where they can see that immediately. But that's only one piece of information. I mean, it's if you have information about the suspect and what they've stolen or whatever, you've got several pieces of data. But the more interesting thing is when we can start pairing that information with other real-time intelligence. And that's where I'm enthusiastic about us going in 2025, is getting more connections between retail and law enforcement in other ways. So camera feeds from external cameras, GPS devices being used in more strategic ways, LPR connections, license plate reader connections between retailers and law enforcement. A lot of retailers use the mobile protective units like LVTs and things like that, making those feeds more accessible to law enforcement. All of that's going to, I think, be important as another layer in that intelligence sharing between law enforcement and retail, because that's actually actionable and provides a richer context around incidents as they occur. And who's
Can you
involved
talk
and
about
all
that data for a minute? I know it's being shared to help do case building and as you're saying, kind of like the real time, sort of boots on the ground type stuff. Is there a broader scale analysis going on with that data that's being shared with law enforcement, or is it sort of just sitting there building cases?
It's mostly there so that law enforcement can respond more effectively. And to build those cases. But unfortunately, a lot of those connections haven't even been made yet. There's a lot of work being done there, but there just hasn't been a good way for retailers to share information with law enforcement or real-time intelligence or real-time crime information effectively. Now there's several different platforms that are rolling out that make those connections relatively easy, whether that's a platform called Fusus or Command Central Aware from Motorola or Flock OS. There's all of these different systems where they're really putting a lot of thought into how do I get information to law enforcement. This is where, and we're kind of going full circle here, but from a deterrence perspective, it doesn't matter how much intelligence you have if the people further down in the criminal justice system aren't going to do anything with that.
Right.
So I can put all of this, I can make all of these investments in cameras and ORC investigators and all of that. But if I'm not also investing in making sure those cases go the full mile, go the distance through and are prosecuted, and I have people showing up to court to advocate on behalf of the company, if you don't have that, you just kind of made everything else
Right.
less effective.
Yep. Got to get it over the finish line for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, for example, with the LPRC, we talk about manipulating risk, effort, and reward to reduce offending. And what we mean here is we can increase the risk that an offender will experience negative consequences for their actions. We can increase the effort required to commit an offense, or we can reduce the benefit of offending. Now, those are just kind of three strategies that we use. If we increase the risk that they'll be apprehended, that's fine. If they only if they believe that there is going to be a criminal justice response to all of that information we're capturing about them. If that's not there, then all that intelligence that we're gathering is less useful, which is why it's important to have those connections with law enforcement and prosecution. That's when you'll get a deterrent effect. Because people know if I do this, then the true risk of negative consequences are higher. This is just from a theoretical standpoint. That is different from incapacitation, which if you have prosecutors actually prosecuting cases, you're going to have either you're going to have deterrence, incapacitation, and rehabilitation that all take place. Incapacitative effects are, if I put an offender in prison for a year, right? If I put them in prison for a year, then and they typically commit, let's call it 12 offenses per week, right? Then I've reduced crime approximately by 12 times 52 offenses per year.
Right.
That's what you would have. That's an incapacitative effect. Deterrence is if I have these solutions in place and the consequences are known and all of that, I deter that incident at that place without having to incapacitate by putting them in prison. Rehabilitative effects would be similar to incapacitative effects in that if you can get someone to change their ways, you're also going to reduce all of those offenses that they would typically have committed in that year of offending on average. But all of that is completely dependent on what prosecutors do.
Right.
So if we focus just on thresholds, we're going to leave out the prosecution piece. We're going to leave out what law enforcement does. We're really just focused on policy if we're talking thresholds, when it's really practice in law enforcement and prosecutorial decision making that affect everything as well and are super important. So that's my my spiel for that.
Now, I hear you. Like I said, it's very easy for a politician to stand up on a stage and just talk about one component of crime.
Yeah.
It's tougher to sit down and really do the hard work and try to come up with solutions that are more well-rounded. I think that's really where we struggle in this country. So let's talk a little bit about the research that Christina did with the NRF. We saw this press release, came out, we published it this week, or last week, sorry, about the 93% increase since COVID. What can you say tell us about that?
I think that it was a brilliant approach to this year's to the survey, really focusing on incident data to understand the change in incidents. The reason I think that's important is because I think in the national conversation, we've got several things confused. Retailers have been trying to help everyone understand the challenges that they're having with retail crime. That's gotten conflated with, shrink. Yes, part of shrink is malicious sources. There's also non-malicious sources, and that can go all kinds of different ways. If you focus on incidents and focus on the crime, then you're no longer conflating that with shrink,
Right.
which is problematic for so many different reasons. So
Mhm.
I really like the approach that they used to get at this. The other thing that they did is, I mean, because you had people reporting the number of incidents that they had, previously and now, you can actually say this is what the change was within all of these organizations over time.
Mhm.
Um, and it's not trying to compare a different group of survey participants from one year to the next, which is something you always deal with surveys. Even with the ORC across the state survey, we get different participants each year, which is why I'm very hesitant for us to make statements about year over year. This is the change that happened because of according to the survey, because you
Mhm.
have different survey respondents. I mean, the first year we did it, we had like 180 participants. The second year we did it, we had 355.
Right.
It's clearly a different group of people. With this survey, they actually ask about known incidents and compared within company to before COVID and after COVID. Um, and then our research at the LPRC using the ARCS data also support the increase in crime. It's just when you use official statistics, you start seeing other things, which can be due to changes in reporting.
Right.
Um, I can go into that further, but I think that it's a very important study for the industry, and I applaud the work that they did.
Well, great job to your team as well, and Christina, especially for
Yeah,
helping put that together.
Christina did an absolutely fantastic job ushering that from beginning to end. I've been the one that's primarily worked with NRF in previous years. I'm trying to shed some more of the actual hands-on analysis and all of that to do more leadership work, but she did an absolutely fantastic job, and I couldn't be happier. She's also submitted an article for LP Mag this month on the craved model of target selection. So,
Great.
and then she also talks about captured. So I think that's actually been sent to you today, maybe.
Oh, excellent. Check my inbox. I'm excited to
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah, it's important for people to understand. And she goes in depth about it, but and I've talked about the craved model before. Um, she's introducing something that's very similar, but it's just all the factors that influence the targets that offenders select. The old craved model is a product concealable, removable, available, valuable, enjoyable, or disposable. All those characteristics are characteristics of products that are often stolen.
Yeah.
And it's important for people to think about that because it can help them understand, okay, what products should we be attempting to protect? If I have a new product going out, and how likely is it to be the target of theft,
Mhm.
immediately, and then how likely is it to be a target of theft over, the upcoming years as people become more familiar with this product, and how might we protect it? So
Great.
it's all very, very important stuff.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing that. So, Cory, anything else that you want to talk about with the research that you guys are working on? I know you're always busy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, right now we are hard and heavy planning for Integrate, which is going to be, we do simulated events every year. Um, there's a ton of work going on. We've got signage projects that we're working on right now. Um, uh, I don't know where to start. So let me think about some of this. Um, One of our team members, and I don't want to get into the specifics too much, but we've been deploying trail cams and getting video of fire lanes. So this is super exciting. What he's done is we have Spanish moss down in Florida, so he's yeah, covered this trail cam up in Spanish moss and attached it so we can view the fire lanes. And what we're trying to do is just get a baseline understanding of what is happening on this fire lane, so that when we do deploy other prevention methods and interventions, we see what was the fire lane parking like before and what is it like after. So there's things that we're doing like that. We're doing signage studies. One of the things we always run into when we're working with retailers is the signs that might be more effective for offenders aren't necessarily the signs they go with because they're not on brand. And
Right.
so the pushback they get from brand is, hey, we need to get this. The sign idea is great, but it needs to be this color and it needs to say this to be on point with brand. Now they say that without any evidence to back that up. So we're doing the signage studies to understand, are there negative impacts on brand perception when you put these different signs out there, so that when retailers do pitch these sign ideas, that they're not dismissed out of hand with claims that lack any data supporting them, like the signs are going to harm the brand because of how they look.
Right.
So
Interesting.
we're doing stuff like that. There's just so much going on. Those are just a few things. We've got LPR research. We've got mobile protective unit research. We've got several different problem-oriented policing deployments happening in different cities where law enforcement are using some of these technologies to address problems, and we've seen some great successes there. We have some reports coming out on our Knowledge Center about that. More of the research from the Voice of the Victim that Christine on our team did is coming out. It was a mass survey of over 1,000 retail workers to understand their experiences with victimization. Those are just some of what we're doing, and that everyone will get to see soon.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing everything you guys are putting together. I know you guys have your LPRC kickoff coming up soon at the
Yes.
big show, or at the end of the big show.
Yep.
Looking
And
forward
the
to
big
it.
show.
Yeah.
It's going to be a fantastic event. It's how we kick off the year. We do it the day after Big Show. So it'll be at Hudson Yards up in New York City. It's an absolutely beautiful venue that AT&T has been able to sponsor to support for us. But what we're going to be covering is, our research agenda for the year, some of our key focal points. No, it was the beginning of this month. All the research team members at the LPRC did project pitches to the team, to identify what they're going to work on for the next year. So we went through that, and we're going to be revealing some of that and the research agenda, going over some of our events, going over the members' journey map for the year. So just a ton of good stuff is happening at
Awesome.
that event.
Well, this is all great stuff, Cory. I always love talking to you. We have such great conversin, and
Yes, we do.
we're going to have more of these talks. So be thinking about other things you want to get salty about and talk about.
I'm a little less salty today than I was when we talked at the show.
Yeah, I
But
was.
it's just
We were
when I
both a little
hear
salty.
I hear the stuff from politicians, and it's like, yes, felony theft threshold is important. Yes, I have my own political views about that would tend to make me want to be as low as possible. But there's other things to consider that probably play into this a lot more, like prosecution practices, like policing practices, that
Yeah.
all have to be considered alongside those policy issues.
Yep.
So,
All right, friend.
that's
Well,
that's what we're trying to do at the LPRC, is get everyone to understand that.
that's right. That's right. All right, Cory. Well, it was great to visit with you, and I look forward to catching up with you again soon. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.